Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of all the men and women at Wizards of the Coast, welcome to the Magic the Gathering World Championships 2011. Once again, the finest players are pitted against each other in this, the crucible of worlds. Our world champion will have to navigate their way through a competition featuring standard, Innistrad draft, and an unexplored modern format. As we watch the tale unfold, we will also be witnesses to one of the finest end-of-season races the game has seen. With the 2011 event season drawing to a close, no fewer than 13 players could still lift the Player of the Year trophy on Sunday night, succeeding Brad Nelson. 7 hail from the game's historic dominant force, the United States, spearheaded by current leader Owen Turtenwald after a momentous and record-breaking year, and Pro Tour winners Louis Scott Vargas, Ben Stark, Paul Rietzl, and David Scharfman, while Josh Utter-Layton and David Ochoa are still in the reckoning. The challenges to the Americans come from far and wide. From Europe, there's the Czech master Martin User and Belgium's Vincent Nemois, who leads his national team into battle this weekend. Stalking them all are a trio from the country that has made the Player of the Year trophy their own in recent years, Japan. Shuhei Nakamura, Shota Yasuoka, and Yuya Watanabe have between them a stellar record that includes 3 Player of the Year titles. And what of Paulovita Dama de Rosa, who came within a single match of claiming the title last year? He too could have his hands on the trophy come Sunday. Now the finish line approaches. To introduce the competing countries for the 2011 Magic the Gathering World Championship, please welcome Pro Tour Tournament Manager, Mr. Scott Larrabee.
Argentina, Australia, Austria, Belgium, Brazil, Bulgaria, Canada, Chile, China, Chinese Taipei, Colombia, Costa Rica, Croatia, Cyprus, Czech Republic, Denmark, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Great Britain, Greece, Guatemala, Hong Kong SAR, Hungary, Iceland, Ireland, Israel, Italy, Japan, Lithuania, Macedonia, Malaysia, Mexico, Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Panama, Peru, Philippines, Poland, Portugal, Puerto Rico, Romania, Russian Federation, Serbia, Singapore, Slovak Republic, South Africa, South Korea, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Ukraine, Venezuela, and the 2011 host country, United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, the 2011 represented countries for the 2011 World Championships.
And now our ceremony continues with the induction of 3 more of the game's greatest into the Pro Tour Hall of Fame. To introduce the class of 2011, please welcome the Pro Tour historian, Mr. Brian David Marshall.
It's really hard to believe that this year's incoming class to the Hall of Fame is the 7th so enshrined. They bring the ranks of the Hall of Fame up to 29 players, 29 of the greatest players to ever play this game. This trio accepting their rings this morning makes up a class that follows the growth of the game around the globe and through 3 different eras of Magic. from an American player whose roots as a competitor predate the Pro Tour itself, to a new generation of European player who made 40-card decks his specialty, and of course, the split format mastery of a Japanese Player of the Year. This class has been playing Magic from the very first Pro Tour all the way through to this weekend's World Championships. And without any further ado, let's meet the 2011 class of the Pro Tour Hall of Fame. The United States' Stephen O'Mahony Schwartz began his Pro Tour career in the junior division of Pro Tour 1, but he was already a powerhouse in the competitive Magic scene.
He was a really great ambassador for the game, right? Wherever Steve showed up, people were happy to see him there, and he had a great time, whether or not he was playing or whatever he was doing, but he was a really good force for the community.
I was growing up in New England and traveling down to New York for some of the New York Magic $1,000 tournaments, which were the big events before there was a Pro Tour. And even back then, there were pretty much two people who you didn't want to play against. One of them was John Finkel, and the other was Steve Omas.
He was playing in the Masters division by Pro Tour Columbus and has been eligible for induction since the formation of the Pro Tour Hall of Fame.
I mean, my only question is what took so long? He's the only player who has a win, a second, a third. I mean, I remember the win because he beat me, and I don't know, like 4 Grand Prix wins, and he's just sitting there not in yet. But finally this year he made it.
O'Mahony Schwartz posted multiple top 32 finishes before his breakthrough second-place finish at Pro Tour Mines, where he developed a reputation as one of the game's most formidable limited players. He cemented that reputation when he won Pro Tour Los Angeles 1 year later at a star-studded final Rochester draft table.
Our decks just came together beautifully, and the other side of the table was a bloodbath, man. It was ridiculous.
Well, I mean, I was in the top 8 of the Pro Tour that he won, and I witnessed him orchestrate a master plan during the Rochester draft, where he successfully wove this situation where his neighbors ended up playing the exact right colors so that he could have all the cards to himself for 3 people's worth for his strategy.
As a member of Team Antarctica, along with brother Dan and Hall of Famer John Finkel, he picked up his 3rd Pro Tour top 8 in Washington, D.C.
Steve was very poised, very thoughtful about the game in many ways. Certainly, a tough player to play against. Certainly, we had a lot of classic matchups even in the early days.
Stephen's 2007 win at Grand Prix Massachusetts, long after he'd retired from the game, was his 4th in 10 top 8 appearances, and reminded Hall of Fame voters about one of the game's first superstars.
I mean, I remember thinking it was awesome when he, just came out of nowhere to win Massachusetts in 2007. It was like, oh, okay, by the way, I still exist, guys, and I'm going to crush all of you.
Steve's early Grand Prix wins in Madrid and Zurich marked the first time that players traveled overseas in search of pro points.
Steve goes, he wins Madrid, he wins Zurich. It's like all of a sudden the first wave of American players going over to Europe, and he was the guy that won those Grand Prix.
We started traveling to foreign Grand Prix together, and I was fortunate enough, I didn't have much money growing up, but my mom was a flight attendant, so my flights were free. Steve was always like, oh, you can stay in our room, so I got to stay with him and Dan because he really wanted me to be able to come to the Grand Prix and experience that. So I think without Steve, I wouldn't be where I am today in Magic or in life.
Stephen O'Mahony Schwartz. Sweden's Anton Jonsson debuted with a top 64 finish at Pro Tour Tokyo in 2001, and he returned to the Pro Tour a year later.
Certainly I played him in the quarterfinals of Pro Tour New Orleans. Anton's a very, good-natured player, very thoughtful about the game.
He quickly became a Pro Tour fixture with 2 top 8s that season.
And I do remember, it's like, oh, Anton Jonsson, top 8, and beginning to notice, hey, he's done this 3 or 4 times now. He just, every time I turned around, he's in the top 8.
His first top 8 that season was constructed, but his next 4 trips to the Sunday stage would all come in the limited format, establishing his reputation as one of the most feared 40-card masters in the game.
There aren't very many players that are as scary to sit across the table from as Anton Jonsson. I mean, when he was on the top of his game, he was just one of the best.
mastery he has shared with readers and viewers at home through his wildly popular drafting columns and videos.
And you have to have a really deep understanding of something to, break it down as elegantly and as straightforwardly as he does in his columns. And I think that's just one of a kind. I mean, it's very, very, very difficult to do that.
You know, he's one of those guys that could pick apart a limited format like no other. Very meticulous. And I'm glad that he's doing stuff like that now on the website to kind of pass his knowledge on to everybody else.
In the middle of the last decade, as equipment was introduced into the drafting equation, Anton was one of 3 players, along with Mike Turian and Nikolai Herzog, to put up back-to-back top 8 finishes in 2 limited Mirrodin Pro Tours.
And so, of course, it's great being in the top 8, back-to-back top 8s with the 2 of them, but I wish it was just me making back-to-back top 8s, right? When I would be between rounds waiting to play it, I played pretty quickly. And so I would go check out Anton. I would go see, what is he drafting this time? How is he doing? Because Mirrodin, with equipment being the brand new, it was a whole new limited format, right?
Years after his last top 8 at Pro Tour Nagoya, Anton showed up at Grand Prix Gothenburg to inspire the next generation of limited masters with his 9th Grand Prix top 8.
You know, I've done drafts with him, I've watched him play in the Pro Tour, and then he comes back and in Gothenburg last year, almost wins at that GP as well.
I think he made a really big impression showing like how good you can be on limited. He really showed that if you play a lot of limited, you could really break the format.
Ladies and gentlemen, from Sweden, Anton Jonsson. Shuhei Nakamura first made his mark on the Grand Prix circuit, getting as far as the finals of Grand Prix Kobe in 2001.
His first tournament appearance of note was GP Kobe 01, where he took second place to Itaru Ishida, another giant of Japanese magic.
He would post 4 more GP top 8s before he would begin to post those types of finishes at the Pro Tour level. At the end of the 2004 season, he was a member of a formidable Japanese national team that included Tsuyoshi Fujita and Kenji Samura.
Everyone whose opinion I respect voted for Shuhei. And I mean, I don't think it's close. All the his Pro Tour top 8s, his number of pro points he's accumulated, Player of the Year, him being level 8 every single year since the Players Club, started, both in dedication and play skill, it's pretty hard to beat him.
His first PT top 8 came a year later at the start of the 2005 season in Columbus. He would post 4 more top 8s over the next 6 seasons and has been at the highest levels of the Players Club for every year of its existence.
Nakamura's run at the top of the game has been just amazing. The guy has finished top 5 in the Player of the Year race 5 of the last 6 years. It's like a first, a second, and 3 fifths.
Shuhei was rewarded with a Player of the Year trophy in 2008.
Shuhei is one of the most obvious inclusions in the Hall of Fame that I can think of. He's over 400 Pro Tour points. I mean, that's just an astronomical number.
There has never been a fiercer road warrior in the history of the game. With Shuhei playing every weekend, there was a tournament to be played.
I don't go to too many Grand Prix anymore, but the random Grand Prix I go to, I'm just like, oh, there's Shuhei. And I saw him 2 weeks ago at the Pro Tour halfway around the world.
Every Grand Prix, he ends up playing in Grand Prix trials. He hasn't any Grand Prix buys in years, but he just loves the game so much.
No distance was too far for Shuhei to traverse in the pursuit of his goals.
He literally goes, win the Grand Prix, spend 2 days traveling. Okay, I'm at another Grand Prix. He probably doesn't even know where St. Louis is, right? And he's winning another Grand Prix.
He won back-to-back Grand Prix, St. Louis and Hiroshima, and they were both Cold Snap limited. So since he clearly was at home in the Cold Snap format, the Japanese started calling him Snowmaster.
While crisscrossing the globe, he has performed to the tune of 17 Grand Prix top 8s and 3 wins.
I played against him in the finals in Grand Prix St. Louis, and I just felt like I was being leveled along every axis.
Shuhei has truly played the game and seen the world.
We rented a car and did some sightseeing around the national parks in Florida.
and there is this alligator on the way, and Shuhei's like, oh, look, I've never seen an alligator in my life, so how about I go like close to him and start petting him? And we're like, oh my god, people started running away from us. They're like, oh my god, this guy wants to get himself killed. We're like, oh Shuhei, maybe you shouldn't do that. She's like, oh no, I want to take a picture, you know. So we took a picture with Shuhei and an alligator, and then just casually walked away.
While other players have wilted under the strain of constant travel in just a single year, Nakamura has flourished and remains one of the most feared opponents to stare at across the table.
Like, if you need to count on your opponent to make a mistake to win, I don't think you can do that with Shuhei.
Ladies and gentlemen, from Japan, Shuhei Nakamura. Ladies and gentlemen, your 2011 Pro Tour Hall of Fame class.